Welcome to Shadow to Soul. I'm Darshni, a regression therapist and a soul guide. On this podcast, I share real stories from my work so you can begin to see how patterns form and how they can change. Stories that show what we carry internally shapes what we experience externally. Up until now, I've been sharing my own journey and more recently, real anonymized client stories so you can begin to see how these patterns show up across different lives. Today, I'm sharing another anonymized client story. This is a story about a relationship, about love, about patterns, and about the moment someone chooses themselves. Let's begin. Asha was in a marriage that looked stable from the outside. There was life, there were 2 children, there was structure. But within that structure, there were cycles. Periods of calm, steadiness, followed by periods where tension returned. Vinay was reactive, volatile. Small moments would easily escalate. Conversations turned into arguments. And for Asha, these arguments carried weight. Daily life felt heavy, and eventually even getting their children to school became difficult. There was no shared rhythm, no consistency. She created space for herself in ways that would not create conflict. She began waking up earlier in the mornings. She started navigating life quietly. Then one morning, something changed. She was juggling getting the children ready for school, handling the affairs of the house, and just holding the morning together, when something she did triggered Vinay and an argument began. And this time it happened in front of their children. Something within Asha snapped. And she said, "Enough. Stop. I'm not doing this anymore." And Vinay, frustrated, asked, "Why do we keep doing this?" And Asha finally said, "Because maybe we don't belong together." And this statement shook him. And he said, "But you know I love you." And Asha felt the truth within herself. Love on its own was no longer enough. She left to drop her children to school and went to work. She somehow managed to keep herself together until she had space. And as she spoke about what had been happening, the clarity came through immediately. She recognized the emotional impact it had on her. She recognized how emotionally distressing this relationship was for her. But what affected her deeply was that she had continued within it without seeing it fully, because she had supported others through similar experiences. And it was now she saw herself clearly. At this stage, I gently asked her, "What part of you allowed this?" And that question brought her focus inward. She saw a version of herself that adjusted, stayed quiet, continued, and accepted. And she recognized that version. But through the inner work she had been doing for close to a year at this point, she also recognized that she had moved past this. Staying quiet, adjusting, living in submission didn't feel comfortable anymore, didn't feel safe anymore. There's something I want to add to this, because this moment, when I asked, what part of you allowed this? This is where the work actually begins. Not in what the other person is doing, but in recognizing what we have been accepting within ourselves. And this isn't about blame, it's about awareness. Because once she saw that part of herself, the part that had learned to stay quiet, to adjust, to keep the peace, she didn't need to force a change. The shift happened naturally. And from there, everything else followed. There was another layer to this, one that had come through in earlier regression sessions. When her awareness moved back, it didn't just show her that she stayed quiet, it showed her why. As a young child of around 2, she experienced her mother very differently. Her mother had a lot going on in her own life. Her presence wasn't consistent. And when she was present, she was filled with anger. Her anger felt intense, unpredictable. And for a child, there is no context, there is no filter, there is only experience. And in those moments, she felt afraid. She also saw something else. Her father never intervened to protect her or her brother from their mother. So from an early age, a judgment began to form. If anger comes, no one will stop it. And so, to survive it, I need to learn to avoid it by becoming quiet, accommodating, accepting. And in doing that, she noticed the intensity of the anger reduced. The environment felt calmer, more settled. And for a child, that feels like safety. So what began as a response to a single moment became a pattern, repeated and reinforced. And that pattern created her belief that high tempers mean danger, and being submissive keeps me safe. And in this session, another layer came through. Specific moments where she had tried to speak, to express, to question what felt unfair. And in those moments, she was met with an aggressive physical reaction. She was silenced. And so, the pattern deepened with a further nuance. Not just I stay quiet to keep the peace, but if I speak, something will happen. I will get hurt. And from there, the response to anger became automatic. It was no longer a choice. It was a subconscious response to a threat. It was survival, to adjust, to absorb, to continue. Because at one point, this is what kept her safe. And as she saw this clearly, something began to shift. Because what she had been living in her marriage wasn't new. It was familiar. It was an expression of her belief system. And now, for the first time, she could see it for what it was. From that awareness, after working on bringing peace to those inner children that experience those moments, she made a decision. She chose herself. She prepared to leave her marriage, to create space, to return to a place where she could rebuild herself. Her decision felt clear. And even though there was sadness, there was grief, there was also steadiness. There was also comfort in knowing that her decision came from awareness, not from emotional turmoil. She recognized that she was choosing herself fully. Vinay, of his own accord, had a therapy session scheduled. At first, he chose not to go. And for Asha, she felt neutral. She allowed that choice because she felt grounded in hers. And Vinay, recognizing this neutral response, it affected him. It worried him. And he chose to go for that session. During his session, deeper patterns surfaced. There were intense emotional layers, traumatic experiences, patterns that had been influencing his behavior. Through all that, he saw how he had been showing up, and he felt the impact of his behavior. And he recognized that he needed to make things right. He owed her an apology. There were deeper energetic influences present, patterns held beyond conscious awareness. And as these were addressed, something shifted within him. It took him a few days to process all that had come through for him. And after those few days, he reached out to Asha. He apologized. There was awareness in his words. There was responsibility and ownership. And as she shared her experience, her moments of emotional distress within their relationship, he listened. He was repeatedly shocked by what he heard. He had no awareness of some of those moments. And in that moment, for Asha, something became clear. There had been influences beyond his conscious control. And so she asked him to share what came through in his session. Because energetic influence was something she was familiar with. It was something she had experienced. She knew how real it could be. And so, with difficulty, he shared, and she listened. Both were fully present, fully aware, and she felt into what was true for her. She trusted her inner judgment. He had shifted. The change felt real, and in that moment, she chose to stay. From that point forward, his behavior had changed. There was consistency. He responded differently. He wasn't reactive. The volatility had gone. And the environment felt calmer. It felt stable. And it didn't feel forced. Over time, trust returned for her. And together, they found a new path forward. Through their own inner work, they recognized that their relationship carried purpose. It was intentional. It was an opportunity to complete what had not yet been completed. It was an opportunity to learn, to evolve, and to grow. Every relationship reveals something. And in this case, both were able to see clearly. That clarity created space for a different way forward. If Asha's story resonated with you, stay with what came up. There is always more beneath the surface. Follow Shadow to Soul so you don't miss what comes next. Thank you for being here. Until next time, from Shadow to Soul.